Hey everyone, Kelly here, and today I would like to talk about the books that I read in July. We still have a couple more days of the month, and I have a couple books I'm getting close to, but I have time now to film. So I'm going to talk about the 7 books that I've finished so far, and if I finish those other ones before July finishes, I will just put a clip in at the end. But let's talk about these 7 that I read, and for the most part, I had mostly 4 stars. I had 1 3-star. So let's talk about that one first. So my 1 3-star of the month was The Romance Revival by Christina Lauren. This was an add-on for Book of the Month. And, you know, this was just like fine. I don't think there was anything necessarily wrong with it. It just maybe it didn't work for me completely. Maybe it was the tropes, whatever. And this is not necessarily Christina Lauren's typical thing. And I liked that part about it because it actually has like a little bit of a speculative element in it. We are following a married couple, and we kind of like see a little bit of like how they got together, and kind of like they got married very quickly, and they were kind of opposites. And then the wife, the person we're following, what's her name? Emery. She is has like kind of a super secret job, and she's at work like all the time, and so it's like, you know, kind of leaving her husband a little neglected, like as in like hardly ever home. And then something happens that makes her like kind of regret that she hadn't spent more time with her husband. And so she uses the like top secret thing, medical thing that she is working on, to give herself a second chance. So it's kind of like a second chance romance in a marriage. And I liked that, the little like kind of speculative, kind of futuristic thing that was happening, and there was nothing to say wrong with this, but I felt like even in their second chance, it seemed like they were really hot for each other, but maybe still weren't connecting on a higher level and like enough for me to be like that interested. I was like, okay, so yeah, you guys still really like each other and are attracted to each other, but like, are you going to connect enough to like keep this marriage going long term? So I guess maybe it was a little more on the steamy side and less on the actual relationship side for my taste. And so that's why I gave it a 3-star, but there was nothing like wrong. Like other people there are people that don't mind that, they want like more of the steamy scenes or whatever. So that's just my opinion on that one. And then I have read Death of the Author by Nnedi Okorafor. This is one of those books that last month when I was doing wrap up, I talked about a lot of books that I had started months ago and finally finished. This was one of those. I've been reading this over the course of like several months, and not because I didn't like it. I don't know what, I think the pacing of this was just like at a point where I kept putting it down, but I ended up enjoying it. I didn't end up rating this yet because I just couldn't figure out where I landed, because there were parts of the ending that kind of like threw me off, and I was like, oh, did that lower my rating? But I did enjoy the book overall. This is like literary fiction with a little sci-fi element. We are following Zelu, I believe is her. Yeah, Zelu is our main character, and she is a paraplegic, and then she's also a sci-fi writer. So she writes this very big sci-fi book about robots, and then because she becomes famous for that, this like company that is creating this new tech offers it to her and basically gives her like robot legs. And so it's kind of like we're following her journey as like just basically her life as she like writes this big like this novel that takes off and, you know, becomes really famous, and the pressure of writing the sequel and all that. And then we also have all of her family drama, and then kind of like what this is like having a, you know, a chance to try out this new tech, and like how that affects her life and her view of herself as a member of the disabled community, and like lots of different topics following Zelu. Zelu is a very unlikable character, and I think a lot of reviews, that's some of the things people don't like about it. I didn't mind her. I mean, yes, she's frustrating sometimes, but I also think her whole family is very frustrating. So sometimes I think she's very justified in the way she acts, because she's got all this pressure from her family to be a certain way. So there were a lot of times I was really supporting her and like the things she was doing, even though it maybe wasn't the best decisions all the time. But I was like, you know, she had to make decisions for herself with the pressure of like her family wanting to be all in her business, or not really focusing on her or caring about what she cared about. Yeah, so we're just basically following her life, and that's why it feels more literary fiction, but we also get the chapters from the sci-fi books she wrote in here. So we get like the robot sci-fi as well. So I liked this. I just can't figure out how I want to rate it. But I would still recommend it if you like literary fiction with some sci-fi elements and you don't mind an unlikable character. And then my daughter and I are reading through Keeper of the Lost Cities. This is book 2, Exile, by Shannon Messenger. And this one was another 4-star. And I'm really liking how the world, I had read this one before, but it's been a while since I read it. And as I'm listening to these books again with her, I'm enjoying the way each book opens up the world more. We get more characters. This one has an alicorn, which is a flying unicorn. So, I mean, that's great. And we learn about a lot of the creatures in this world. And yeah, so I am enjoying listening to this with her. I still think that these books are too long. They don't need to be this long, but they're still good. And then I read Under the Same Stars by Libba Bray. And this is one that I gave 4 stars, but maybe in my heart, it was probably more of a 3-star because there's nothing wrong with this book. I think that a lot of people would like it. It's historical fiction from 3 different time periods. There's a lot of great themes. I just found myself bored at a lot of different places, so maybe it should be a 3-star or 3.5 star. But there were like good themes happening. Like I said, there was 3 time periods, so we are in 1940 something, no, 1939. And I think it actually, that time period kind of went over a few years, so like it went into the 40s, and that one, yeah, went into the 40s a bit, and that one's obviously like at the it's in Germany, and it's following people that are right at the beginning, like Germans, like that are just like everyday people that are kind of like, what's going on, just hearing that maybe the war is more is happening than what they're being told and all this stuff. So that was one timeline of in Germany following 2 girls. And then the next timeline is in West Berlin in the 1980s. And so that one is taking place with 2 girls again that are, one is from America and she had moved to Berlin with her family, and she's being introduced to the punk scene in West Berlin by this other German girl. And then that's when the wall is still up and all that stuff. So there's a lot about that and fascism. And then the third timeline is in 2020 New York City. So this is like right after the pandemic started. And so everybody's in lockdown, and we're following a boy living in New York City who is like kind of by himself because one of his moms is stuck in Europe during the beginning of the pandemic, hasn't been able to come back over, and his other mom is a nurse, and so she doesn't really stay at the house. She stays at the hospital, so not to bring anything home, like a lot of healthcare workers were doing at the time. And so we're following him and like kind of him school online and all that stuff. So this is like covering 3 different time periods, but all of the same theme of kind of like dealing with authoritarian governments and fascism and all that stuff. So some good themes. I just found like sometimes I was really bored. Like the 2020 time period, I was like, I don't care about most of what was happening in his life. And maybe that's because we were really close still to the pandemic, that it was a little maybe too close. But I was finding myself more interested in the 1940 timeline and the 1980s and kind of how they connected with the people and all that stuff. So yeah, I think more people looking at the ratings, more people gave it a higher rating, and so I feel like probably I just was maybe not loving it. And then next I finally read Frankenstein by Mary Shelley, and I've had this for a couple years. I've been meaning to read it as part of Jane Austen July for a few years now because one of the prompts is always to read a contemporary of Jane Austen, and they always recommend reading Frankenstein, and I just hadn't gone around to it, and I did it and I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars, and I found it really interesting. You would think like it's so much in, you know, just the like pulp culture that we know about Frankenstein and the monster or creature or whatever. And, you know, there's been so many movies. I've actually never watched a Frankenstein movie, so I didn't have the movie plot in my mind, but I have kind of just like the things we just kind of know about Frankenstein and his monster. And I thought that this was much more introspective and the themes were great, and just not really like monster movie kind of thing. It was really, like I said, introspective, and I really enjoyed it. So in this, we get both the perspective of Frankenstein, Victor Frankenstein, and then there's a section where it changes and we get the perspective of the creature or monster or what being. Mary Shelley doesn't call him a specific thing. It changes, and actually the introduction in here, I was reading about that's kind of like one of the things that different people call him different things. And Mary Shelley uses different terms for him, and we hear his perspective, and that was just like, so I actually really enjoyed his perspective and just hearing about being this new being on Earth, but like being fully formed and having everybody scared of you and like what that feels like, and then learning from scratch how to be alive. And yeah, I thought this was really great. And I also didn't know about this narrative framework. That very beginning we are seeing letters, but it's not Victor Frankenstein, it's this other guy who then meets Victor Frankenstein, and then he's telling the story of all this through these letters. I mean, it doesn't feel epistolary once we get to like Frankenstein's point of view, but that's like the narrative framework, and I didn't know about that. So there was a lot of interesting things that I still didn't know, even though this has been around forever. So I would recommend it if you still haven't read that. It's pretty quick, because obviously this version would still have like notes and stuff, so it's only like 200 pages long, the actual book. All right, and then another thing I read for Jane Austen July was Ladies in Waiting, Jane Austen's Unsung Characters by a bunch of authors. This is a short story collection. This has, I think it's 7 stories. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 stories. And I started this off and I didn't like the first story, and then I read the second story and I didn't like that story, and then I read the third one and I hated that story, and I almost put the whole thing down. And then I went to like Goodreads and just checked reviews, because I was like, are all of these the same? Do people feel the same way about all these stories, and it's just me? And several reviews said that the stories in the second half were better than the first half. And so I was like, okay, I'm gonna keep going. So I continued on, gave it another chance, and then I really enjoyed all the rest of the stories. Like, as in, I was looking up the author's name, seeing what else they wrote, because I liked every other story, and it was just the first 3 I did not like, which is interesting, because maybe that was like bad choices by the editor, but then I realized the editor was also one of those 3 stories I didn't like. So maybe me and the editor just do not see eye to eye, but I did not like the first 3 stories, but the rest of them are good. And these are all like stories that take place with side characters. So like one of the ones I really liked was about Caroline from Pride and Prejudice, and kind of like, and that one, some of them take place in different time and location. That one took place started in New Orleans, and I don't actually know what the time frame was, but it was a while ago. And then she was moving out west. And so like, yeah, some of them sorry, my daughter's dumping out a puzzle. So they're not all taking place in the same time period as Jane Austen, and some are. And yeah, all of the rest of them are great. So if you pick this up and you don't like the first couple stories, I would suggest to keep going, because all the rest I loved, and I want to like look up some of these other authors to like check what else they've written. All right, and the last thing I will talk about is a book I don't have physically. I listened to this. It's Make Believe by Mac Barnett. This is only like a 1.5 hour, 2 hour book, so I would highly recommend it to everyone that enjoys children's literature and appreciates it. Mac Barnett is the ambassador for children's literature, and this basically is he's talking to adults and saying why we need to create quality stories for children, and stories that children will connect with. So yeah, it's kind of just essays about that, and I just thought it was great, because I think children's literature is very important. I also think a good story is a good story, so I can read children's literature and still enjoy it as an adult if it's like, good. And then there are also stories that are still good for children that I don't enjoy, but children enjoy. So like kind of balancing all of that together. And yeah, just the importance of having a wide variety of things for kids to read, just like adults have a wide variety of things to read, that there's still genres and still different interests in children, not children have to all read the same like thing. So I would recommend it because it's pretty short and really good. I want to get a copy of it so I can highlight it. Just my local bookstores don't have it, so I have to figure out where to order it. But yeah, so that's all as of now. If I have read anything else, then I will insert my end clip here. Well, I did end up finishing 2 more books at the end of July. And of course, now we're a little ways into August, but gonna finish this up so I can post my July wrap up. So I finished the 3rd book in Keeper of the Lost Cities earlier. I had talked about the 2nd book, continuing to enjoy this, listening to these with my 11-year-old, and we're enjoying them. This one I think is when things start to get like more intense, like as in it shows that there's actually going to be stakes in this series, and so there were some more like things happening, bigger things happening, so that one was good. And the last thing I read was Misconnection by Tia Williams, and unfortunately this one was only 2 stars for me. It was one of those that, like, as I was reading, and I even went on like Krista's live show, was chatting in there and was saying I was like halfway through and I still didn't know how I feel, and she's like, put it down, and I was like, no, I think I might like it, but I don't know. But that should have been a sign that if I just really don't even know how I'm feeling at all halfway through the book, probably should have known that it wasn't going to end up being like over a 3, and ended up moving down to a 2 in the last half of the book. And so this is about this woman, what's her name, Sasha, I believe. This woman, Sasha, who she has had some things happen in her past, and she's finally kind of getting back to her job and getting back out there in the world. And she goes on a flight and she meets this guy that she really connects with, but they don't exchange names or information or anything. And then afterwards she's like, oh, that was like the first like real human connection I've had in a couple of years, and I would really like to see him again. So she sends an email to a friend of hers that she works with, or an acquaintance that she works with, to kind of see if she could help her find this guy, and accidentally sends an email to the entire corporation about finding this guy, and that kind of sets off a chain of events. And then she also hires a private detective to help her find this guy. This private detective is from her past. A couple years prior, they had been, like, she had him work on a case for her a couple years ago, and so there's a past there. And the thing with this one was that I just really didn't like either of the main characters. It's not that I wasn't rooting for their romance, because I was like, well, maybe you should be together because you both have a lot of work to do, so maybe you can like do that while being together. But like each of them definitely had like, not even just like, characters obviously have flaws, but made some really bad decisions. There were boundaries crossed all the time. There were things that like Sasha did that I was like, if she were a man, like if the roles were reversed, I would think people would be up in arms, like with some of the things she did, that she like pushed the boundaries. Like he would set a boundary, he would say like, this is my boundary, and he would say it like out loud, this is my boundary, and then she'd be like, oh nope, just gonna cross that, just gonna do it anyways. And I'm just like, that's not a really healthy way to start a relationship. And so yeah, there was just things that were really bothering me about both. And then the male main character in this one is also just like, he's very protective, and I know some people like that real protective type, but this felt in a toxic way that he probably needs to seek therapy, like to work through some of the things that is causing him to be so protective. Yeah, so I didn't like either of the main characters, and that's why I just kept, I think Tia Williams can write well, but this was just not a good example of her work, in my opinion. I just couldn't get on board with either of the main characters. So those last 2 things that I finished in July, I already had like a 5-star in August and a 4-star right after it that I really enjoyed. So I'm already having a better August than, that 2-star read. So I will see you next time. Bye.